Hi everyone, welcome to this video. So this is the part 3 of the AWS overview series. So in case you have not watched part 1 and part 2, then please go ahead and watch those. So in this series we are trying to cover around 27 AWS services. So before we move to the next service, that is AWS Secrets Manager, I'll do a quick recap of what we have covered in part 1 and part 2. So in the part 1 and part 2 we have covered services like VPC. We have covered EC2 instances, EBS volumes, EFS, RDS, auto scaling, load balancers, Route 53, and CloudWatch, S3, IAM policies, Lambda function. So all these things we have already covered in part 1 and part 2. So I would request if you can go ahead and watch those. So before we move to the first topic of this video, that is AWS Secrets Manager, I would request if you like this content, then do press the like button and also subscribe to this channel as we will be releasing more such videos in future. So let's start this video with AWS Secrets Manager. Thank you.
So secret can be anything such as confidential information which we cannot share. It can be some passwords or database credentials, API keys, anything like that. And we cannot store these in plain text because that will be a security concern. So we have to store these secrets very carefully and in an encrypted manner so that only the authorized person can access that. And the service that helps us to do is Secrets Manager. It helps in managing, retrieving, and rotating the secrets. Secrets, as I said, can be anything like credentials, keys, and it automatically rotates the secrets. It is capable of doing that. So in the previous example, we have seen that we have created EC2 and we are talking to RDS. So in order to communicate to the database, let's say we have Oracle database, we should authenticate. So let's say that earlier we were storing the credentials in EC2 in plain text format, but that is not the right approach. So what we should do, we should use secrets manager. We can store the secrets here that the credential and allow EC2 instance to read from here and, and then access the RDS. So this is how we should do. So secrets manager, it stores the secret in encrypted way, and encryption is done by KMS, that is the key management service that I'll be covering in a moment. So it does the encryption and you can use a Lambda function to automatically rotate the secret. So there is a lot of associated information, but on a high level, it does this. Then your application can access the secrets and connect to the different services. So here we can see that RDS. So we are storing our secrets here now, and we are allowing EC2. But here the IAM role needs to be updated because earlier we were saying that uh, EC2 talking to RDS, but that is fine. But now RDS credentials are stored in other applications for a service that is Secrets Manager. So our IAM role that was created earlier, the policies needs to be updated. So now we need to allow the role permissions to Secrets Manager also, RDS also, right? So that it can access. So now EC2 instance uh, will go to Secret Manager for the credential and then access the RDS. This is how it will work. Next is Certificate Manager. So this help in provisioning and managing SSL and TLS certificates. So in order to have secure communication, we need to have the certificates in place. So this simplifies the process of obtaining the certificate and also the renewal of the certificate. So there are different ways you can have certificates like public certificates. You can have private certificates that are issued by AWS Private Certificate Authority, and you can also import your certificates. All these things can be in Certificate Manager. And once you have the certificates here, you can use those certificates on load balancers, CloudFront, API Gateway, and all. And for renewal purpose, we can renew Amazon issued certificates. So you need to keep a close watch on certificates using CloudWatch. You can do a monitoring. And using Event Bridge, you can set up some automatic actions for the renewal. So on a high level, this is for managing your certificates. So here we are storing, let's say we are creating a certificates from Amazon only, and these are stored here, and we are using these certificates on application load balancer for the secure communication. So this is how certificate manager fit into the picture. Next service is Cloudformation. It is a very important service and very useful as well. So by now we have seen that we have created many resources like EC2 instances, RDS, S3, and so on. But is it okay to create all these resources manually? So like if we have to create 50 EC2 instances, what is the solution? Or we have to create multiple databases, multiple roles, then creating manually is not an efficient approach. Then we are not taking the benefit of cloud, I would say, because if we have to spend weeks in creating these resources. So the solution is infrastructure as a code. So what we do, we create our infrastructure as a code. We define what we want to create, what configuration we want. All these things we define as a part of code, and then we deploy that code. So that is what CloudFormation is. Here you have the feasibility, or you are allowed to create JSON or YAML templates, that is CloudFormation template. You can define that you want to create a EC2 instance or RDS or what resource in this template, and you can create stacks. That is what we call in CloudFormation. You can create stacks and your resources will be created. Suppose you have a template that creates 5 EC2 instances, and once you deploy, your 5 EC2 instances will be created. It is very easy to control and track changes because you can modify your template and update it, and your resources will be updated. Code infrastructure, you can store CloudFormation templates in S3, and then you can create stacks, and finally you have the resources that you want to create. So here we can see that CloudFormation, we are storing templates in S3, and as a symbolic, we can say that we are creating all these resources via CloudFormation, or you can create as simple as a EC2 instance, or as complex as a complete architecture also you can create. Elastic Beanstalk. So previously we have seen two of the compute service, EC2 and Lambda, but there is another service called Elastic Beanstalk. So there's a challenge, pros and cons with both. So for EC2, we have to create instance network. Uh, we have to create load balancer, everything. But Lambda is serverless. So, but if we don't want to create any infrastructure apart from the network layer, we don't want to create load balancer, auto scaling, then Elastic Beanstalk is the solution. You have to just upload and deploy your web application. You can just focus on writing the code. Capacity provisioning, load balancing, auto scaling automatically done. No need to do that. So bring your code and your web application is deployed. You need to just give the network layer, like which VPC you want to deploy and all these things. But that is the easiest way to deploy the application. Behind the scene, Elastic Beanstalk uses CloudFormation templates for this. So you can just need to bring the application code, Elastic Beanstalk, and behind the scene it uses, as I said, CloudFormation, and it will create all these resources based on the configuration that you need given. Like if you want to deploy a single instance application or you want load balancing, all these things you can do with just few clicks. So you need not to worry about managing the load balancer and all. So that is Elastic Beanstalk. So here we have seen that Elastic Beanstalk um, it is capable of creating EC2 instances, application load balancers, all these things can create behind the scenes. So basically, what all resources what we have created here can be easily created with Elastic Beanstalk with a single console, except this networking part, that VPC and subnets. Next is API gateway. So by now we have set up our applications and all, but how do the outside application interact with our application? So we need to create some APIs and expose those API to the outside world. For that purpose, API gateway is this. So it is kind of application integration service. So it helps in publishing, maintaining, and monitoring and securing APIs as well. With API gateway, you can create RESTful and WebSocket APIs. So you can create APIs, and then from APIs you can set the target, or the the results can be returned from Lambda functions or EC2 instances. All these things can return the result basically. So you can set these are the consumers which you have exposed the API, they are consuming it. Then you have API gateway cache, because it stores some data frequently, then it can return the response from here itself. Then if not, then it will forward the request to the backend endpoints. So this is what API gateway is. So you can see that applications, we have exposed some APIs from here. Behind the scene, APIs will connect to application load balancer or Beanstalk endpoint, which we have exposed, and they will return the response. So this is what API gateways. Again, a very useful service from AWS. DynamoDB. So previously we have seen one relational database RDS service. There were different engines under it. But if we need a NoSQL database? So there we have a DynamoDB. So it's a serverless NoSQL fully managed database, and it stores data as key value and document database. And again, you have to pay for what you use. So it's a NoSQL database and serverless. That is very important. So some important points for DynamoDB, like it has global tables. You can do encryption at rest and on-demand capacity mode. So all these things are here. So you can export and analyze data streams to S3. You can export, then you can analyze the data using these service. Then we are monitoring CloudWatch. So all these things are here, but the important point here is that it's a NoSQL database. So DynamoDB. So you can again write a Lambda function that can do some processing, read the data from DynamoDB, and write it back to S3. So this is a very high level, but the differentiating factor between RDS and this is it's a relational and it's a NoSQL database. KMS, Key Management Service. So here what we do, we create and control keys that are used to encrypt the data. So we have seen that we are storing data in S3 or EBS volume or DynamoDB. So it becomes very important to encrypt that data when it is stored. So it helps in protecting the data at rest. So here we have customer managed keys, or you can use AWS managed keys as well. So you can create a key and then you can use that key to encrypt your data. So data encryption is a very important thing that we should always do. So KMS helps us in doing that. So here you can see that we have KMS. So it is currently in design encrypting the data that is stored in EBS volume or S3 or DynamoDB. So you can create customer managed keys and encrypt the data, and you can allow that restricted access to those keys, so that only the authorized person can decrypt the data. So it is a very important service as a security point of view. Next is Redshift. Firstly, this is a data warehouse offering, and it uses SQL to analyze structured and semi-structured data, and it is designed for online analytical processing workload. So it is mainly for analytical purpose, and again it is for pay what you use. You have to pay how much you are using. So I'll not go in depth for this, but the most important thing is that it's a data warehouse service. So here you can see that this is the Redshift we have. Then we can export the data to S3 from here. You can again use the Lambda for processing of data. So you can do some processing, do some modulation, and then maybe store in S3, or you can export the data to S3. Sorry, you can import the data from S3 as well. So all these things you can do from Redshift. Cloudtrail. So Cloudtrail basically it tracks all the user activities and the API usage. So any API calls or user activity that happens in the account is tracked by Cloudtrail, and it helps in enabling governance, compliance, auditing. Because if somebody is interacting with S3, then it gets recorded what action they took, whether it is uh, success or access denied or any other. So it is recorded in Cloudtrail. So you can capture the records, you can store it, you can act like in case of any unauthorized, you can take some actions, you can block it, and you can review. This is what Cloudtrail is about. So you can see that we can have the Cloudtrail stored in S3, then we can do some analysis. We can record any actions on resources or API calls made. DynamoDB, let's say if somebody is interacting with making some API calls or accessing something. So all these things are recorded in Cloud. Moving here, next is the AWS config. It is used for access, audit, and evaluate configuration of your resources. So uh, it is used for evaluation of your resources. You can create some config rules here, and then you can see whether all the resources are compliant or not. That you can see. It simplify operational troubleshooting by correlating configuration changes. So you can see what all configuration changes are made to your resources. You can track those, and if something unauthorized is done, then you can easily roll back that as well. You can manage your resources, you can discover resources, record configuration, you can evaluate, you can simplify, and then it is also very helpful in troubleshooting as well. So this is like it tracks all the configuration changes. And further, you can create config rules and you can see if resources are compliant or not. So AWS config is there, then you can see changes what are done to S3 or any other resources here. SNS, so this is a publisher subscriber, we call it PubSub, that is the thing. So it is one of the messaging service, and here you can see it is capable of sending application to application message to decouple, or it is also for application to consumer. You can send SMS or email, and it works on push notification. So here you can see that SNS we have to create one SNS topic, and then we can send the message to it, and there is some filtering and fan out architecture. Basically, fan out is that we can have SNS here, and then from SNS we can send the message to multiple consumers, so that is fan out. So here we can see that we are integrating here SNS with the S3. So as soon as any object is updated in S3, we can send a message to SNS. We can push here, and then further we can see how we can fan out the architecture. Next is SQS. This is simple queue service. It is used to send, store, and receive message between software component. So it is a queuing service, and it works on poll mechanism. So SNS works on push. You have to poll the SQS to retrieve the message, and it is a message queuing for microservice, and it is very much used for distributed system. And because suppose you have application 1 and application 2, so in order to make them communicate or decouple, you add a SQS. So application 1 send message to SQS, and application 2 can read from here, so it is decoupled, and they can talk to each other asynchronously. So SQS, SQS queue, and then consumers we have. So producers send message to SQS, and then queue, and then consumer. So this is the entire flow. So here you can see that from SNS we are sending message to SQS, and further SQS we are triggering Lambda function for the processing. So this is how a fan out architecture like is there. Cost Explorer. So here we can visualize, understand, and manage your AWS cost. So it is most importantly used for forecast future cost. So you can forecast, you can using AWS Cost Explorer, you can filter and group your data. You can set interval and granularity of your data, like monthly you want to see or weekly or daily. Then you can forecast your future cost on the basis of the past expenses. So this is Cost Explorer. It is a very useful service because it gives you an estimate of the cost that might be coming next month. So we can use it for planning purpose. So I just added this here because it applies to all the resources. Next is billing and cost management. Now we have created all the resources in AWS. What about cost? if we have to see what resources is incurring how much cost. So that is billing and cost management. So it allows you to easily understand monthly AWS charges. So you can set your billing, pay invoices, all these things you can do here. You can manage your purchase order from here, and you can see how much resources, which is the costly resources if there is, and you can plan better. Again, this is a service that applies to all. So we have just placed it here. So with this service, we are at the end of this video. So here we can see that we have created a complete network, and we have placed in applications installed on EC2. We have load balancer, we have auto scaling, we have some database, data warehouse, uh, NoSQL database, S3, monitoring, security, config, everything we have tried to explain. So if you like this content, then please do like this video and subscribe to the channel. So thanks for watching this video.